So I want to start this video by saying if you have not watched the previous videos in this series, you probably should go back and watch the others first, as they will help you to understand this one. To start off here, I just want to say to all those who struggle with their faith that they should know that they're not alone, and that every rational believer at some point must go through the process of transitioning from the simple world of our childhood faith into a mature faith that requires periods where we wrestle with God. But I also personally want to say that if approached the right way, these experiences have led me to a new level of peace and knowledge that makes the gospel even more real than before. As part of approaching this right, we need to examine our own motivations. Are we resentful right now? Are we in a good headspace to even begin an unbiased exploration? There is a saying out there that people will believe what they want to believe. If someone is angry and just wants to justify that anger, I can't help here. My hope is that the people watching want to believe, but are struggling at times to justify that belief with their righteous commitment to intellectual honesty. I have found that people have a wide variety of reasons for struggling in their faith. So the first thing to do, if we are struggling, is to be honest about why. Is our struggle primarily due to moral disagreements with the positions of the church or intellectual issues? It's probably both to some extent, but one is probably bigger than the other. We must be honest with ourselves about this. This video is not going to help if your issue is primarily a moral disagreement with the church on an issue like, gay marriage or something like that. It also won't help if your primary issue is that you're upset with church leaders or policy or church culture. Those are not primarily intellectual issues. This video is for those who do not have serious moral issues with the church, but who struggle intellectually to justify saying that they believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the one true church of our Savior, Jesus Christ. So to get started, did you notice the presuppositions in the statement that the church is the one true church of our Savior, Jesus Christ? That statement is full of assumptions. That statement assumes that God exists, and that the Jesus of the New Testament is who the New Testament claims that he was. Do you and I believe any of those claims independent of Joseph Smith? Would we retain our belief in God and Jesus Christ if Joseph Smith turned out to be a fraud? If not, then do we really believe in God and Jesus Christ? Or do we only believe in them because of Joseph? But wait, we are talking about beliefs. On what grounds can we say that we know anything? Is everything mere belief? If there is a possibility that we could be wrong about something, how could we ever say that we know it? Is there anything that we can actually be 100% sure about? Cannot our very eyes deceive us? These may seem like silly questions that philosophers ask, but they're not. They are the bedrock that we build on. They are the very first questions we must ask ourselves if we are engaging in the pursuit of knowledge and truth. And if we want to re-examine our faith, we have to go to the very beginning, the very foundations, because if those are off, everything changes. If nothing else, we need to understand the real roots of our struggles, and they often are far deeper than we realize. We have to start by examining our own epistemology. Now, epistemology is just a fancy word for your explanation for how a person says that they can know something. And that is a widely disputed topic of conversation. The first task of intellectual honesty is to examine the lens and criteria that we are using to say if something is true or not. Now, I could not possibly in this video lay out my personal epistemology, but I will link in the description of the video one of my posts on that subject. All I'm trying to do here is to say that before you even engage in seeking the truth, you have to examine how you are going about detecting what is true or false, and what tools you think you have to aid in actually discovering truth. Only then will you even be equipped with the right tools to begin the renovation of your beliefs. And that should begin with this exploration at level 1, the question of the existence of some sort of a higher power, the existence of God. Can you make a compelling rational case for why God exists? Can you deal with the arguments made by atheists, or do you just avoid confronting these arguments? Do you even understand the nature of the debate between the best atheists and the best theists? Even among the intellectually engaged members of the church, I have found very few have seriously engaged with the more foundational questions and issues related to why it's even rational in the first place to believe or not believe in God. We need to be honest about the fact that our deepest foundations are often assumed, and that is why a re-examination and fortification of our belief in God needs to be the first place that we go. Then from there we can move on to understanding why we believe that Jesus Christ was the manifestation of that God in the world. And then, and only then, with that firm foundation of belief in the Jesus of the New Testament, are we ready to approach the restoration. We need to stop obsessing with Joseph Smith's story if we have not fully fleshed out level 1 and level 2 of our belief systems. Because ultimately Joseph is irrelevant if there is no God or if Jesus was not the Christ. But if there is a God, and if the Jesus of the New Testament was who the New Testament claims that he was, the Joseph Smith story comes into a whole new light. Another critical thing to remember is that renovation requires caution. Tearing down walls can bring the whole thing down, and I mean everything, not just the church. There is a dark hole of nihilistic hell awaiting us at all moments. So how we go about this exploration and renovation matters. Remember that ultimately we are trying to build something. We are exploring reality for what we can believe in. I have realized that I am less interested in hearing what people don't believe in than I am in hearing what they do believe in and why. What you find among critics is that all they're up to is tearing things down. But building is how we avoid the meaninglessness and nihilism that is spreading like a cancer throughout our society. So when approaching this issue, we should start with the positive case. Start by looking for things that you can believe in. Start with God. Seek out all the best minds and arguments for why it's rational to believe in God. You will find astonishing things. Do you know the arguments of Thomas Aquinas, Blaise Pascal, George Macdonald, William Dembski, Stephen Meyer, Alvin Plantinga, William Lane Craig, Jordan Peterson, C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton? Could you summarize the top arguments from each of these people? If you were to have read and fully understand the primary arguments made by all the people I just mentioned, and still you found Jeremy Runnell's CES letters strong enough to pull down your belief in God and Jesus, I would be shocked. There are brilliant minds out there that can give you a solid and strong reason to believe, at the very minimum, in the rationality of belief in a higher power. You have to know where you are. Are you at level 1? Are you at level 2? Are you at level 3? Also, when you're engaging with anyone else, ask yourself, are they at level 1? Are they at level 2? Are they at level 3? And then have the appropriate conversation based on where they're at. When you consider all the things in the positive case, suddenly the challenges to faith become much smaller. Yes, they're still there, and yes, they're still problematic, but they are put into proper perspective. They become like puzzles that you have not quite sorted out rather than intellectual deal breakers. So am I saying we should just ignore the critics? No, of course not. Absolutely not. Once we have really put in the legwork and understand the best arguments on the positive side, we can go ahead and examine what the critics have to say. We can test our structures of belief. And we should. We need to see what can hold and what can't if we're really after the truth. But when we start with the positive case, we approach from a position of strength against nihilism, and a position which for me has shown that while the problems and challenges brought up by the critics can be very real, they pale in comparison to the reasons for belief, especially when we place our spiritual experiences on the scale. It's like we are all faced with a scale, and we can fill each side of the scale with reasons to doubt or reasons to believe. There are reasons to doubt, but if we don't seek deeply the best reasons to believe and truly take the time to deeply understand the best arguments for belief, then we will not be ready to handle the doubts. And if we are intellectually honest, we must eventually take into account the critic's position. Eventually, our building must be exposed to an earthquake, but it would be crazy to do that without a fully developed foundation. The adventure of life is figuring out what we can believe in. Nihilism is not the answer. Agnosticism is not the answer. We have to act in the world, and implicit in our actions is what we value. A rational person is a person who can explain why they hold the values they hold and why those values are not arbitrary. This process of faith renovation is an ongoing one for all of us, but it was most intense for me for the 10 years from 2008 until 2018. It was a journey that changed my life. It took me from the peace of my childhood faith through a fascinating and sometimes challenging renovation process that has brought me to the other side to find peace again, and a realness and an authenticity to my faith that is like living water to a thirsty soul in the desert of our increasingly depressed and confused secular world. So start the process. Don't seek to simply deconstruct. This is a renovation, not a demolition, even if that means some old outdated plumbing needs to be replaced. Ask if our human reason alone is ultimately sufficient to grant us the full knowledge and understanding of reality. Seek out the best minds on these questions and keep building. I'll go ahead and lay out some of my favorite sources that really were part of a mountain of evidence for my belief in God, my belief that Jesus was the manifestation of that God, and that Joseph Smith was fundamentally telling the truth. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want more content, including the podcast, go to thoughtful-faith.com. Thanks for watching.